Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bacon, I make plans for 7:45, and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. We got a bunch of you on tonight. Good evening, CFNers in CFN land. We'll see how long it lasts. I don't know. We might even want to start a contest to see how long our feed will last before Facebook jumps in and removes it. Hello. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. Speaking of a great weekend, if you live in these parts, the weather this past weekend, it was just incredible. To our folks to the west and the south who have been pumping all this hot air towards us, we thank you. I know in some areas you folks are dealing with snow, colder temperatures. So for that, I apologize, but thanks for sending it our way to all you folks out west. And as I said, to the south, it's been awesome. It's been really, really awesome. Rob, how you doing? Good to see you. Sally's in the house. Nice to see you as well. Lloyd, Trisha's with us. How you doing? Tony, as always, is here. Sorry, no contest tonight, Tony, but there is a big one coming. We've got a couple that we're working on right now, so stay tuned to that. Richard Dunlop's in the house. Barry Trachi's with us. Thanks for all your sharing, by the way, Richard, and everyone else who shares our feed. Ron McFarland, nice to see you, my friend. That's a new name, I think. Nick's in the house. Nice to see you, Nick. Eve's with us. Jeremy, loved your video, by the way, dude. Great video. If you have someone that you know that is dealing with mental illness, or perhaps are addicted to cigarettes, or just need some good advice, some good sound advice, Jeremy Blanco shared a video that I wish I had the link to, but I'd love everyone to either share it or just watch it, because Jeremy pours his heart out, and that's what our CFNers are all about. They wear their hearts on the sleeve. Jeremy, salute to you, dude. That was an incredible video. Steve Shaw, how you doing, my friend? I hope you're relaxing, brother. Jeff Richard's in the house. Nice to see you, Jeff. Yes, I saw that. Jeff, you had quite an outing out on Lake Erie. Unfortunately, family comes first. That's about all I can say. And I hope there will be an open invitation yet again. I'll take a rain check, because yeah, you definitely caught some decent fish. Nice to see you, Douglas, all the way up from Nunavut. Manny's in the house. Nice to see you. Wow, we got a lot of people here with us. This is fantastic. Klassen, nice to see you. Bob, what a group. Well, you know what? I'm not going to waste any more time saying hello. Hello to all of you. Thanks so much for joining us. We've got a bunch of things that we're going to be talking about. First and foremost, if you haven't, make sure you get out and vote. If your municipal elections are taking place, make sure you do your part, your democratic part. I know they probably all suck, but get out there and vote. Pick the best one of the bunch. That's the best you could do. That's the best advice anybody can offer. But if you don't exercise your democratic right, it will be taken away from us at some point. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, get out and vote. That's the best advice anyone can give at this point. Also, on a sad note, we have to share some news about a CFNer that has been with us for a number of years, has been battling an illness that we knew would eventually take him. He knew it was going to eventually take him, but he was strong as an ox, determined, and unfortunately lost the battle. So I want to thank Craig Ainsworth, Barry and Sally, Walt, Richard, there was a couple others that reached out to me as well in regards to Shawn Ponte, and I hope I'm correctly saying that name, but unfortunately Shawn is no longer with us. Beloved CFN, he loved his CFN. My word, this guy lived and breathed CFN, and his family put together an interesting little snippet wishing Shawn well on the rest of his peaceful life, we hope. But I'll tell you, that family is missing him. His friends are missing him. But as you can see with the CFN jersey in the background, it's incredible. How far our reach is, how many people we touch, and it's just incredible. So to his family and friends and the rest of CFN who is mourning his loss, as we are, we wish you well, and we wish you peace, and we just hope the days get better for you, because as I said, no matter whether you knew it was coming or you didn't, it doesn't. A loss of a CFNer is a loss of a CFNer. And Shawn, as I said, thanks for your dedication, thanks for your support, thanks for all you did over the years. You will be sorely missed. Hope you go catch me a whale wherever it is you are, dude, because your efforts here at CFN will be forever remembered. So I hate starting on a sad note, but that is a sad thing, and it's unfortunate that we lose CFNers. It's just a fact of reality, but it doesn't make it any easier knowing that. So Shawn, to your family, friends, our thoughts are with you. On another note, on a happy note, and this is really interesting, it is Diwali. If you have friends that have that background and aspire to celebrating Diwali, I wish you all well, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great celebration. What's interesting out here in this area is we have an air quality warning, of all things. And it's not because of smog necessarily. It's because, of course, we have some humid temperatures coming up from the south, and the air is very stagnant. So you probably can't hear them, but they're going off behind me as we speak. And there's a good contingent of Diwali a good contingent of those celebrating Diwali here in Brampton, as you can well imagine. So there's going to be an issue with the air. Go figure. I can honestly say, of all the times I've watched weather and followed it, I've never seen an air quality concern come up because of fireworks. But it is what it is. Good evening, Kevin. How you doing? Corey's in the house. Oh, there's the link there. Thanks, Jeremy. Folks, if you know someone or you yourself are suffering, that link right there, it's worth a listen. Good job, Jeremy. Thoughts and prayers, absolutely. It was yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Shawn. Yes, 100%. Well said, Richard. And of course, last but not least, when it comes to announcements, the last one I have for you is if you are celebrating Diwali, Thanksgiving, Remembrance Day, or any other day for that matter, and you want to wear your CFN because you're CFN proud, go over to Fish Whipped Outdoor Apparel, talk to our good friend Babs, and she'll hook you up. There is the link. There is the webpage, fishwhippedapparel.ca. And as I said, wear our colors, your colors, all of our colors, very proud. And we are honored to have you do so. That's it for announcements for me. We've got our panel coming up. But before that, here is a word from our sponsor. There he is, the one and only Big Jim McLaughlin. How you doing, my friend?
Boom shakalaka.
Boom shakalaka.
So who won the money on the weekend? My boy.
Yeah, amen, brother.
So cool to watch him with that rod buckle.
Yeah,
with
it is.
dollar bills dancing on the line.
Yeah, and I think that was your segue into that when you screen shared that the overall standings. Boom shakalaka. That's awesome.
Yeah, he hasn't won too much in the last year or two.
Yeah,
he's been there, but it's always nice to tuck a bit more. I guess when you've got I think he's won like $3 million. So when you've won that much, my 350 in Canada looks like a pittance, but it's fun. I also haven't done it for 20 years too.
This is true, but based on and it's funny, it's a good segue because if you haven't subscribed to Jim's YouTube channel, please do so. And I want to share.
Yeah, because I'm serious. I got all the names and the numbers and everything. I'm watching.
Wow.
Like the ninjas, I've got them behind a rope, and the rope's bowed out. They got the morning stars, and they're ready to go to these people's houses that haven't subscribed. It's not going to be pretty if they get away. And
so you don't want to deal with ninjas. You don't want to deal with Norwal, and you certainly don't want to deal with
Norwal.
So do yourself.
You hear a knock on the door. You go to the door, and there's a narwhal standing there. This isn't going to end well for you.
Absolutely not. So I'm going to play this little snippet. This is chair side sessions with Big Jim from Big Jim's Just Fishing YouTube channel. Some good advice here. Jim, it's a good segue in regards to the season. We are dealing basically with the same weather as you were when you were sitting chair side. Have a listen, folks.
A little bit of lawn chair bassin here is always a bit of fun out in the back here at night. And when I come down here, I treat this just as if you're out in the boat. This time of the year now, what's happened in the last few days here is all the slop and the scum has just dissipated. We haven't had any really cold nights, but it's just dissipated, and it's getting at a time now where for a while here on most of this, you're putting away frogs and stuff like that. And you're going to want to use lures that run horizontal. I'm not going to fish down here with a jig. I'm going to fish with a chatterbait. I'm going to fish with a spinnerbait, perhaps. Crankbait, a shallow rudder, a square bill. Swim jig becomes huge at this time of the year, but you want something that goes horizontal. So when you're fishing, you're making your cast and you're bringing it back. Let it sink a little bit, give it a little bit of movement. I can just feel that thing just vibrating away there for all it's worth. But just, bring it back. You're trying to cover now. The fish aren't sitting down there now, looking around and wondering what's above them. They're looking all around them now because all that cover overhead is gone. And what happens as soon as that's gone, you get an immediate growth of weed. You'll see there's pieces of weed here. I'm pulling up. It's only been 2 or 3 days the slop's been gone, and there's already 2 or 3 inches of bright green weed on top of the brown stuff that have been covered for, probably the last 10 weeks out here. It's been like this slopped in really early. And, we're just talking about one small spot, but you apply this if you're out in the boat, if you're fishing off the bank, stuff like that, you could still catch a lot of big fish. But you got to pay attention to the season. You got to do the same things, whether you're sitting in a lawn chair or you're in a boat. And everything that you're going to want to do, the vast majority of it is going to be horizontal. I'm not saying that if you're out in the boat and you come to a nice clump of weed and you look at it, there's a big boulder beside it. Well, man, I'm fighting to get the jig and drop it in there. But for the most part, this is chunking and winding season for a while. And that's all we're going to do. We're going to fish horizontal. Right over it, I just felt a bit of weed there. Just give it a little rip away from the weed. That's one of the nice things about braided line. You get a bit of weed, quick pop like that, and it's gone. Really, really changed fishing. I don't know how many of you people remember back, when all we had was mono. And man, when braided line came along, so many more fish got caught because people would feel the fish. When I used to guide, the number of times in my life that I reached over and grabbed the rod and gave it a pull, for a client and said, "There, you got a fish on there," because they just didn't feel it with mono. But covering water is the name of the game, whether you're in a boat or you're in a little bay like this here. I just have this, like one cast out there, 50, 60, 70 feet maybe. That's all you got. So you sort of use it, you cover it, you cycle through a bunch of different baits. Like I've got a square bill here, I've got a spinner bait, and a swim jig. And basically those four things are what's gonna do it for you. But you got to cover all the water, And I think
great segment, Jim. There is an incredible amount of advice and techniques, and I love how you approached it in such a way that even whether you're shore fishing, whether you're fishing from a kayak or a boat, all of these pertain to what it is that you're talking about, and you encapsulated all of it very, very well.
Cool, thank you.
So if you want to head over to Jim's YouTube channel and not be inundated with ninjas and narwhals, by all means, I don't know where the link is. I'm hoping, so Just Fishing, look it up on YouTube, and by all means, there's a lot of great stuff in there.
Thanks,
and
Steve.
big shout out to Luke Northmore for putting all these edits together and putting all these videos and making them available to us. Great job.
In fact, I'm going down next Thursday to the Bay of Quinte to do one with Captain Greg Emile.
Nice.
We're going to do one on walleye there. I'll be picking up Luke on the way down there to film it. So it's always fun to get out with Captain Greg because fish come in the boat with him. That's all there is to it.
100%, absolutely, and that is
Guy's an absolute wizard.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. So that's awesome, Jim. Look forward to that.
It was funny. He said to me early in the year like that, we're not going to get big ones. We probably won't get any over 10 pounds. If you want to come in December, it's when they're going to get the real big fish because they've all come into the bay then, eh?
Yeah.
And he said that the only problem is wait until December. You never know. You might not get to do it. So I took the first date that he had available.
Attaboy.
First date that he had available.
Well, we look forward to seeing some. I'd love to see some big walleye. Love to see you holding a big walleye. Brings me back.
The picture that's on the wall at Shimano.
Yeah,
that was the last time we went out with Greg with the guys from Shimano.
Is that right?
Yeah, we got some whippers that day.
Attaboy. So I gotta talk. I gotta mention this Cooper's incredible comeback. Now he didn't win necessarily, but holy smokes, did he jump up in the standings?
Yeah, he had a really good day the second day, and it's that's what it's all about, He didn't lay down and give up, He just kept going, and that's I told him, I sent him a note because the first day he only got four fish, and I sent him a note and I said, "Hey, buddy, head down tomorrow, get 5. It's all there is to it." So what did he do? He didn't. It didn't happen because I told him to, but the encouragement it means a lot when you have people pushing behind you like that. You see people taking the time to send little notes and little bits of encouragement and stuff like that. He had a really good week.
I got to ask you, Jim. This is a bit of a sidebar, but who was there for you? You've been there for so many people, but when you were going through your ups and downs, outside of Tammy, obviously, who was there for you to give you that pat on the back and that support?
Tom Brook, who was the vice president with Shimano, was monster. Absolutely monster. Like I'm talking 12 feet tall in the covered with fur, monster. Was like that. Just the general public. I still have things. They're in a box in the garage. I still have cards that I got sent, like all kinds of little things like that. People wishing you good luck and stuff like that. It's really, really cool. I had some cards that were great big giant ones with 150 guys had signed when I went to the classic. I went one of the classics. I forget which one it was now, but I had that card. It's in the bottom of the box, in fact, because I got a big enough box that I knew the cards would fit first and put everything else on top, and I have all that stuff. And I hope someday when we eventually get downsized to a smaller place that I'll get a chance to display all that stuff because it means a lot to me. I never forget stuff like that. I have little things all around me, but I give it, like I told you, I'm not a material person. Like the lure that I won, 80 grand with, I gave it to my buddy.
Wow.
He almost cried. Like it was in this little thing. It was all mounted. They drilled a hole in the bottom of it and put it on a little piece of I don't know, plastic, some kind of stuff, and it was in this case, that had the plaque on it and everything. And he was looking at it one day, and he's one of the probably 5 biggest lure collectors in Canada. And I looked at him and I said, "Do you have anything here that you're the only person that has?" Like, he said, "No, I've never been able to do that." I picked it up and I handed it to him. I said, "Here, Billy, take that home with you."
Now, can you imagine? Because I've thought of this as well. I mean, all of the baits, the old baits that we still talk about, if you had set aside a pack of all of the stuff that was available back in the day and kept it, what a museum you would have in that back closet of yours.
Yeah.
Obviously, hindsight's 2020, but
I have, it was amazing how simple it really was. And that's why I always tell people, you can't forget what got you there. But I often joke about the boxes, how you could go in a box and tell what year it was by what's in it.
Yeah.
There just seems to be different versions of stuff come out. If there was one thing I wished we would have had when I fished in tournaments that they have now that we didn't have then, was a chatterbait.
Yeah.
It is magic. It is magic. I mean, I used rattle baits back then. You saw me in all my heyday out there with a rattle bait, and Luke got to see it too. People have no concept what you can catch with a rattle bait throwing it in a weed bed. It frustrates the heck out of them, but when you can catch 30 fish, 40 fish in a day, well, I'm chucking it and dealing with the frustration.
It's funny you talk about this, because somebody did ask me a question. They said, "Could you ask Jim at one point?" And it just lit up in my head. Was it easier to fish competitively back in the day when you started, when you were in your heyday, because there was less tackle or lures presentations on the market? Or like, is this time more difficult because you have just like it seems like a buffet of stuff?
No, I would believe you'd be much better off now.
Better off now.
Yeah. Everything. Braided line.
Yeah, true enough.
The number of times that we were joking in the boat, the number of times that I held Rocky by the ankles underneath a weed, like in a weed bed with a tree to get a fish out and stuff like that, because you just couldn't pull them out with monofilament. You use a 30-pound big game.
Yeah.
And because there was just still so much stretch. And now you tie on 50-pound braid and you just yank them out. It's a complete different game. A lot of the lures out there, like when I see these guys fishing in tournaments, and they chuck Senkos. Senkos catch a pile of fish. Fish eat them. But that's not my game. I've never used one in a tournament. I've used them a lot of times just messing around. But even a few years ago when I fished with Chonger in that big one on the Big Rito, the hourly thing that RJ holds up there, I didn't have a Senko rig. It's just one of those things. Mind you, what we were doing wasn't as conducive to using a Senko.
Yeah.
Because we were targeting, we were targeting, smallmouths over 100 feet of water.
Yeah.
10, 15 feet below the surface. So you can't do something slow if you do something really, really slow.
Sally's asking a great question. I want to say it was late 80s, early 90s that it came out, but when did braid finally show up?
Yeah, it would be. I remember some guys that Rocky and I guided. This guy was like, remember the character in the TV show there, the detective there, Don Johnson?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Jackets, the cool, good-looking dude, like I was when I was young.
Well, I was just gonna say, you have to be more specific, Jim. It sounds like you're describing yourself.
God. This Japanese guy is a big fisherman in Japan. I forget his name now. This is a long time ago, and he was the same type of character. He was a movie star in Japan, but he got into fishing. And got really good at it really quick. And he was doing a TV show and everything. And we had them up in Halliburton and that. And it was just amazing to watch the antics of them and what they did, and how different it was. It was just, I don't know, just a cool experience. But it's kind of one of those things.
That's very cool. Wow. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the things that have evolved, we've talked at great length about braided line, obviously
Yeah.
electronics.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's what it was. It was with those guys. They gave us the braided line. They
Yeah.
gave us but it was still more like a Dacron, but it was a true braided line. And
Was it flat back then? Or
no, this was not flat because it was more like a Dacron. It was round.
Gotcha.
But it wasn't like Power Pro. I mean, Power Pro is the epitome of that's, not because a lot of people say to me, I used Power Pro years before Shimano bought them. I just firmly believe it's the best line out there, and the sales back it up. It's monster. But
First braided line was catgut. Is that?
well,
Is that
that was braided nylon. Yeah.
right on?
That was
Thanks for
braided
sharing
nylon.
that, Corey. But yeah, back in the days, Miami Vice. That's
That's it.
That's got to be late. Has to be late 80s. Like
Yeah.
80s,
Yeah, because I remember it was after Rocky and I had got the notoriety for winning a pile of tournaments in a short time. Like we got really good notoriety out of that, and that's what it came when we got the guide and the TV thing, all that stuff. We did all that, and it was really, really cool. But man, oh man, that Power Pro line.
Yeah, I want to say the first line that I recall that came out was Spiderwire, but I might be wrong. There might be.
Yeah, that wasn't a braided line.
It wasn't at all. Oh, okay. I stand corrected. So
I remember when Fireline came out. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. Spiderwire is a braided line,
Yeah.
but the first line that Berkeley brought out was Fireline.
Fireline.
And
Okay.
I still remember getting a phone call and asking me when I got it to be very confidential with it. And I got the line, I spooled it up, I went to the Reno River, and I was fishing small jigs on it. And I used to fish this little sandbar along the shore. I think I was the only person that knew about it. There was always some good fish on it. And I went to throw this little 8-ounce crawfish jig that we used to use all the time up on top of it, and I sailed it about 10 feet into the bushes. And I thought to myself, well, I don't do that too often.
No.
And I went over and I got it out, jiggled it out, got it out, went back out, came around, went to do it again, and the same thing. That was when I realized the distance you got with the line off the reel. It just exploded off the reel. It came off so fast, and it stayed straight. So you had to adjust for that. But there was also the adjusting to a line not stretching the same way. Fireline had some stretch, but I remember Rocky at the time when he got in with there's Eddie. I remember when he got in with Berkeley, he was working with Berkeley, and the number of times, like, he frustrated himself, the number of times that he broke the line setting the hook was crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because he was whacking it. But I had learned from I had got that other stuff from the guys, and it was just, you had to just back everything off. You still got to do it, but you got to know when to tone it down, and that's why we don't use rods. The rods we used back then were so stiff, you could lift a cinder block and they wouldn't be bending, And that's it's not like that now. You see, all the rods have a lot of flex in them, and when you set the hooks, the rod actually eats it. It's like a bungee cord. You hear me talk about that all the time with the fish pulling. It's the same thing with setting the hook. It's
Absolutely. Great question. And Jeremy, I have asked this question before. I don't honestly remember the answer, but I'm going to ask Jim right now. When it comes to braid, does color matter?
I have to say no, because Gussie uses yellow Power Pro. Look what he does.
Yep.
I had a frog rod this year, or last 2 years now, that I used out the back that had blue Power Pro on it, tied directly to the frog. Now, mind you, a frog in the weeds, I think you could use pink line with bells on it. It's not going to make a difference, because the fish, they just see something going by and they blow up to get it. Like, it's that kind, that kind of a thing. Yeah. Gussie told me he just likes to be able to see it. So he'll probably be a 4-eye soon. Have to wear glasses.
And I mean, if you're using fluorocarbon as your main, like your presentation line, so that lead,
Yeah, it takes
They-
away that problem. But
Yeah.
you've heard me say it 100 times. Guys get out there, and what's the lure color that, if any, most of the guys would say, if I had only one color, I'm taking something black. That's what they do. So then they go out and they're using Power Pro, which is sort of like a light off greeny avocado-y color. And what's the first thing they do? They pull out the black Sharpie and blacken the line down so the fish can't see it. But we're putting on a black lure, a black jig to throw into the weeds to find them.
Yeah.
There's,
True enough. True enough. Color matters to me because I'm old and blind. So Barry,
there you go, Barry. You're not old, you're not blind.
you bring up a great point because I like Gussie, and I didn't even realize Gussie was like that. I like the colored line because I like to watch it, just in case you, for whatever reason, you're in the midst of a jig and you've got that little bit of slack line. If it does not drop like it did the last 3 times that I didn't have a fish, it's just one extra thing that you have.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because I got, the other night when I went out the back, I brought this down with me because it's time for this. I got my favorite jig on there, and I'm fishing this, and I haven't had a bite out. I don't know what's going on out the back because all my memories on Facebook show me with lots of and big fish, and it's just not happening. So I'm thinking I'm in the break that came at the beginning of October before. It's going to be closer to the end because it stayed so warm. I'm not sure, but I don't believe there are any fish left out here. I believe they have vacated. They're shallow for some reason.
Because there's no way they've gotten smart and know not to come around there anymore.
Well, if it did, it took them 6 years, so they're not the smartest tools in the shed. But I was fishing the jig, and I let it go. It's not a very heavy jig, just 3/8, about 5 feet deep out there. I let it go to the bottom, and I lifted it, and as it went back down, that line just jumped. So that was the fish going.
Yeah.
I set the hook, and there was nothing there. The plastic wasn't moved, nothing. So I know that there was one fish out there. But if I was fishing with fluorocarbon or mono, I might not have seen that.
Yeah.
I might not have seen it. It was just getting dark, and you really see it, eh? But Jeremy, that's
100%.
It's the bottom line. I wouldn't really get concerned about it. I talked about it last year at the Toronto Sportsman Show when I made the joke about, what haven't I been doing much lately? When the guy answered the question and said standing. And I had said I hadn't been using a fluorocarbon leader as much. I'll never forget the look on Ron's face, Ron James there from Fish TV. And then it happened on the Saturday again. And he came over to me, and I stood up, and as I was sitting on the edge of the stage, and he gave me a big hug. I couldn't plan this. It's just so it was the funniest thing in the world. And for the people that weren't there, I had talked about not using a fluorocarbon leader and explained to them why I wasn't on the tank was because I didn't want to fall off.
Yeah.
And I was just leaning up against the edge of the stage, and I told them, I'm not doing too much standing. I'm okay if I'm moving, but I'm not doing too much standing. So it's one of those things. But
Steve, to your point, can you see the slightest bump in the line as well?
Yeah,
you can. Yeah. If you are cadence fishing, like if you're jigging and you're on a cadence right away, I think it's a lot easier for you to detect the slightest bump. And as I
if
said,
I'm not sure, you know what I do.
100% set the hook.
You set the hook. Hook sets are free. I've been saying that for 30 years, 40 years. Hook sets are free.
Barry, I'm not sure if you would want a braid with the stretch, but do you know of any?
I don't think you could have a braid with stretch.
Yeah, I don't think so either. The way it's,
there's stretch in all braid. People say there's not. It's there, but it's like minimal.
Yeah,
absolutely minimal.
So here's George. George always has a plethora of information, and he's stepping in because Jay's not here. You need to consider color absorbance in water. Red, yellow, green wavelengths of sunlight are absorbed by water molecules. In water, absorption is strong in the red, weak in the blue. Thus, red light is absorbed quickly. Colored line attracts anglers. Well said, George.
Yeah, but the part of the line that the anglers are attracted to is the part above the water. So
that's right.
I'll rest my case on that one. Yeah.
Obviously, we are all excited about this, but Jim, are you excited about the return of the
Oh, for sure.
boat show? Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. And we're going to be doing an ice fishing show. Also, Andy's got that set up, I believe, in November. So we're looking forward to being a part of that as well with OC Nation. Jim, I know you got to get going. You've got some house guests with you. So we are going to bid you farewell tonight. We want to wish you all the best when it comes to getting down to the Bay of Quinte and hooking that big slob. We look forward to it.
Got to do it. I got to tell you, too, if you're into ice fishing, it's getting time because it's sunny out. Start looking for what you want. Scotty and I were talking about this. A buddy of mine bought a nice fish trap last fall, and he stored it away up in the rafters in the garage, and he took it down on the weekend to put it together. And like the mice have taken enough to build a fish trap somewhere else. There's holes in it that are this big, just all chewed through, and mouse poop, and everything else. You're finding moose poop up in the garage antlers, we're in trouble. But it was all chewed to heck, so I put him in touch with someone to get a new cover. So because he's got the frame and everything, he just needs a new cover. So it's a bummer when it happens, but now's the time to be looking for stuff. Getting your stuff out, open it up, have a look at it, make sure it's sit it in the garage if you can. Let it air out, whatever else. But the same with if you've got your winter suits tucked away. I got a bunch of stuff out of the garage this afternoon here. Took it out of the boxes and done. And I'll take, just before I go, I'll share something else with you too.
Oh, here it comes.
You all know that I'm a 100% loyal person in the business to a fault. I've stayed with the same companies basically forever, as long as they've wanted to have me. I've been with Shimano for 40 years. I've been with Vexilar for 30. The other companies that I work with, as long as I could be there, I'm there. I don't jump around. When I started the ice fish, it all started off with clam, and that's when I used to have Dave Gens up here all the time, and we spent a lot of time together. Basically, really put the finishing touches to me as an ice fisherman. It was like, what a learning experience that I had. And then clam they just sort of went out of Canada for a while. They weren't here. They didn't. The whole thing just slowed down a bit for them, and they weren't doing much in Canada, and there was no opportunities there. And I mean, I make my living at this, so you have to have opportunities. And I've been with HT now for the last, I guess it's like 15 years now, a little more maybe. And I'm not with HT anymore. I chose not to stay, and I wrote some very, very nice letters. I got some awesome letters back. In fact, Ken Grail, who owns HT, sent me a note back. And he told me, Big Jim, you were undoubtedly the best pro staff we ever had. If we can ever do anything for you, if you ever like to come back, whatever, I understand fully the reasons, and I stated them to him. And the day after, I called the guys at Clam, and I had a good talk, and I didn't even get to ask to come back, and I was welcomed back.
Wow.
Yeah, and Mr. Shawn will be doing the same thing. So it's so I'll finish. I started off in blue. I'll finish up in blue with them. And it's really funny because Matt, whom I spoke with there, he runs all their pro staff and marketing and all that stuff and everything. And he said to me, wow, he says, I just started to work here. And he said, Dave Gens talks about you all the time. And Dave Gens called me and welcomed me back.
Wow.
He said, it's awesome to have you back. So it's neat. But there's things that you have to do, and you have to make moves at time. This is what you do to pay the mortgage and put gas in the truck and, chow on the table, so to speak. And it's you have to make these moves. And I did it what I believe was 100% the right way. And obviously by the return mails and, everything was good. And Dave did the same thing too, because there has to be opportunities to earn money. And so a lot of the companies, it has really dwindled through COVID. And HT closed their warehouse down in Canada too. So, they'll still have their product here. It's just going to be a different way that things are done. So,
and I will say this, Jim, it's my opinion, but you look far better in blue than any other color.
I've been in blue for almost 40 years, so no reason to
change. It ain't broke,
that.
don't fix it.
Yeah. Anyways, just want to share you the first ones I've told. So it's public now, you know.
There it is. Jim is back with Clam, back with Dave Gens, and I'd love to see the two of you in a hut together, sharing.
Well, it was funny because the last time that I did a show to get with the guys from HT, because I need HT doesn't make big heavy duty huts, and so I always had to use a fish trap. So anytime we did any filming, we had to find a way not to have the fish trap in the way. It's just what you had to do. I had to have something big enough to sit in and work from, operate from. So it's the way it worked. But the one I have out there in the garage now, I'll probably get a new one here now. I gotta go fill out everything and get all the new stuff. And regardless of how long I'm there, it'll be as long as I'm here, I assume. So I'm happy with it, and it's a good move. And like I said, the letter I got back from Ken, the email, when he told me I was the best pro staff he ever had,
can't imagine why, Jim. Just can't imagine why. Buddy, as always, we are honored to have you part of our pro staff. It doesn't pay as well or offer any discounts, but
I've been watching for that check you keep talking about.
I know.
I've got that picture, eh?
Yikes. I just don't want any. I don't want any ninjas or narwhals. I can't.
Did you ever get caught though, allowing yourself to be filmed like that?
Yeah. I don't even want to go there, but I might. Yeah. As I said, everybody has a weak moment. That's all I could say. Jim, as always, take care, my friend. Have yourself a great week. And
be safe out there, everybody.
Right on, brother. Always a pleasure to spend any kind of time with that man. Anybody that goes to the shows and has had the pleasure of sitting down and chatting with Jim, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Just a vault full of information. And hopefully with Luke's help, we're going to get some of that information on his YouTube channel. So as I said, thanks to Shawn Ponte for sharing the link. But if you want some of that information and you're like me, please go over to his YouTube channel and subscribe, because there's going to be some great stuff coming out. In the meantime, we've got Lawrence coming up next, right after this message. Good evening, Lawrence. Gunther, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, buddy. How are you?
Oh, living the dream, as they say, dude. Living the dream. I noticed that Outdoor Canada posted the link to your podcast with Dr. Stephen Cook and some of what you were talking about when it comes to releasing bass and their behavior after they've been released. Really, really interesting. Tell us a little bit more. There's a little snippet in there that I want to share with folks, because we do catch bass incidentally in the wintertime, and there's something that you need to pay attention to. But in the meantime, fill us in on everything that you learned or would like to express in regards to that.
Well, I don't feel qualified to explain all the findings, but they're there in the podcast. So if you want to get into the details, and there's a lot of details, but if you do tournament fishing and you move fish around, and this is super important. You need to understand what's going on. So how they did it, they went into Big Rito Lake. They put in, I think, 11 receivers all around the lake and up the channel between, I think, Big Rito and Little Rito. And because that's where the tournaments often end up, in Little Rito. And then they went to a bunch of the bass fishing tournaments, of course, and they picked out healthy fish, and they tagged them all with transponders. But they wanted to know, like, before they put a transponder in a fish, they needed to know where that fish was caught. And they had a map of the lake. So they said to the anglers, each angler, was there with their fish, and they said, look, where did you catch your fish? And if they said, well, we don't want to tell you, or I can't remember, or I'm not sure where this one was caught, then they said, okay, that's okay, that's fine. But they found plenty of anglers who wanted to participate. And they said, look, this fish I caught, and they showed exactly where on the lake they caught those fish, the largemouth, the smallmouth. And when the angler was absolutely definitive about the fish, then they tag those fish. And they tagged quite a few of them, and not just like with a number tag, but with an actual transponder. And then the fish were released. And what happened to those fish? Well, you have to listen to Dr. Stephen Cook and what his researchers discovered. It is fascinating. And let me tell you, there's a huge difference between what happens to the smallmouth and what happens to the largemouth. But in the end, I don't want to give it away. Check it out. This is groundbreaking research. I don't think this kind of research has ever been done before. And then this is going to shape, I think, at some point, in how tournaments are held, and it gives new meaning to how the post-release activity happens, right? The post-tournament activity in terms of the fish release. Who should be doing that releasing? Where should those fish be going back? And it's super important. Now I want to see them do this kind of research on a river now, because the Ottawa River used to support a lot of bass fishing tournaments, but it's a river with a 2.5 mile an hour current. And the largemouth bass, for the most part, are no longer there. Now, why are they there, or why aren't they there? Well, why did Renegade Bass stop having tournaments there? Because they said the fish had all been moved out. There was a lot of tournaments, and you think about a tournament, right? You leave the wharf, the dock. Some of the boats go upstream, some of the boats go downstream, but they all come back to the dock again and weigh in their fish and then let them go. So if the fish go up, are they going to go upstream and go back to where they came from? Or are they going to go downstream, or are they going to stay where they are? Well, over periods of time, these fish they don't go back necessarily. Those fish, even if they do go back, how long does it take them to go back? And do they get caught in the meantime? So this is all related to Dr. Stephen Cook's research. The timing of the movement of these fish, it's so important. It's so important to understand this, because if they're caught again and then moved a second time, again, say another tournament happens further downstream, some anglers come upstream, catch those fish again, move them, ratchet them downstream. It's chunk, down the stream they go, right? Every time there's a tournament, a bunch of them get moved downstream. And these are the big ones, the big breeders, the bigger fish. These are the ones that are brought to the scale. So over time, over tournaments, 10 tournaments a year on a stretch of river, and over time, over years, those fish are moved. Those fish are moved. And to be honest, I still don't see tournaments happening on the stretch of the Ottawa River between downstream from Ottawa, which was a very popular bass fish. Now, maybe the muskie just eats them all or something. That could be the case. Maybe the muskies are eating a largemouth.
Well, let's not say that.
The muskie anglers would say that's their food. That's their food.
Yeah, you're right. And there's a lot of great information, but with the temperatures and of course the weather changing, there's a bit in here that Dr. Stephen Cook talks about that I'd really like to share. Because it is something that I never thought of. I certainly thought about the concerns about cold weather, but I never thought about what specifically on a fish. We always seem to think about the eyes. Dr. Stephen Cook reminds us that we also have to worry about the gills. Have a listen.
Does it make sense to have a closed season, or could you even have a catch and release season for these things in the winter? So we did some work in the winter. Luc LaRochelle is the lead student. This was pre-COVID, in the few months right before COVID hit. He got out and did a whole bunch of ice fishing, caught a whole bunch of largemouth bass, and looked at what happens when you expose the fish to air during the winter, and what happens when you lay them on the ice, for example. And so, not surprisingly, just like in the summer, air exposure is not necessarily the best thing for a bass. In the winter, we've got things like wind chill, which is potentially problematic for the gills. So you can imagine on a really cold day, a windy day, a dry day, that those gills would freeze pretty quickly. And then we also saw pretty rapid changes in skin temperature, especially when the bass were put on the ice. And so there's an energetic cost for those animals to when their body is chilled down further. They're already have, their body temperature already 4 or 5 degrees. So when you push them down down even colder by throwing them on the ice. Not the best. So basically, take-home message is get them back in the water as soon as possible. That was the big message from that one.
So again, it makes perfect sense. You know, I always thought that the eyes were an issue.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I asked the doctor at the end. I said, "What about the eyes?" And he goes, "Oh." But you know what? He said the eyes. He said, you think about it, and he recovered pretty quick. He said, you think about the eyes. Like these fish are swimming through weeds all the time, right? Around sticks and around weed beds. They're plowing through this stuff, hunting stuff. They got their eyes open. They're chasing. They're looking for prey. He said their eyes are really tough. They're really tough. They're really resistant to scratching, to getting beat up by things. He said he's not concerned about the eyes. But you think about the gills, right? Where that transfer of CO2 and oxygen occurs with the water. This is the vascular level of cells, right? Where they're, that this is microscopic, micro thin tissue where these gases are being absorbed and expelled through these gills. This is very sensitive tissue. It just makes sense that this would be super susceptible to freezing.
Yeah, 100%. And it is good information to pass on to all of our anglers in case we didn't know, or perhaps we weren't sure of what harms fish when we expose them to these colder temperatures and put them in these, I would say drastic temperature differences, variances. You go from warm water to frozen ice. I can only imagine that kind of stress on a fish is not good, not just to the gills, but the overall fish itself. But yeah, Jeremy asked a question. Speaking of tournaments, anyone know why most of them happen to be bass, walleye being the second biggest? It just came to mind. I would have to say that a lot of it, Jeremy, probably has to do with the fact that most, if not all, bass tournaments are catch and release. They have, I would say, in the eye of conservationists or anybody else, it's an easy thing to promote because you're releasing the fish. Not all walleye tournaments, unfortunately, are catch and release. In some cases, especially as we found out on Lake Erie, they are catch and keep tournaments. So I would have to say that if we're going to do any studies, bass would be the best one to pick when it comes to the post behavior or post release behavior, that is, on those fish. Now, you also have some snippets of information that you wanted to share with us as well, Lawrence.
Yeah, I do. I got a few bits here that related to this, and but I also just want to mention too, in the Bluefish news that came out today for October 24th. Look for it on the bluefishcanada.ca website if you're not signed up. If you want to get the news every couple of weeks in your mailbox, just sign up there. No one's going to share your email address with anybody. You're not going to get ads or people calling you to get your ducks cleaned or anything. But there's the editorial there. It's the Public Fishery Alliance in British Columbia have been really under the gun to get fishing opened up for salmon. And they're pulling out all the stops now. They recently held a 2-day awareness session on the Pacific Ocean where they had a bunch of members of parliament come out and government officials, whoever wanted to come out. They took them salmon fishing. They showed them just how difficult it is to figure out where you're allowed to catch fish, where you're allowed to keep a fish, where you're not allowed to even go in your boat. And how you have these zones that move around and there's overlapping zones and the regulations to the point where now people are afraid. People are afraid to put a line in because they're worried that they might not have interpreted the regulations correctly. The regulations are a little opaque. They're a little confusing. They're complicating. They're shifting all the time. And it's been a real deterrent to people fishing. They're out there in a beautiful August day and no one's around. No one's around. It should be the prime of fishing. They want to know what's happening to their mark selective fishery, where they, the hatchery fish with the adipose fin that's clipped. Why aren't they allowed to pursue those? They want to know why, if recreational fishing boats are only responsible for 0.06% of the sound that are affecting southern resident killer whales. And, ferries are responsible for 69%, shipping is responsible for another 85% or another 25%. But between, 0.6% of the sound issue is coming from recreational fishing boats. Why are they taking the big hit on this, though, in terms of the exclusion zones where these killer whales hunt? And why are those, these exclusion zones where they've got research that show that these southern resident killer whales only go into some of these exclusion zones for maybe 3 or 4 days a year. They show up. They don't even spend a day there. They might only be there for a couple hours. The season's 5 months long, and they're only in there for maybe maximum 7 days. They've been spotted by, official surveyors. So, and yet it's a completely walled off to fishing. So they've got some issues. We talked about those issues. There's a podcast that came out now on this. And it's summarized and goes in a little bit more deep analysis on the editorial there. So check that out if you're interested in what's happening with our salmon fisher on the West Coast. This is super important, you guys. Super important.
I gotta ask too. That confusion, Lawrence, has to be by design, right?
Yeah.
The frustration and the just genuine not knowing when you're out on the water. Where am I? What zone am I going to be in? Am I going to get in trouble if I keep this fish? Should I even be fishing in the first place? Is that confusion in your eyes? I'm not trying to be
no, it's confusion, and at minimum, it's the government trying to get some brownie points for saying, "Hey, look, we're keeping all these boats out of the area where the southern resident killer whales hunt." By making it a no-go zone for all of these boats, whale watching boats, pleasure boats, and fishing boats, which together account for 4% of the sound problem. Together, whale watchers, fishing boats, recreational boats is 2.8, whale watchers is 0.6, fishing boats are 0.6. Altogether, that's 4%. That's not a lot. But it looked good when they're excluding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boats out of areas of water, right? Yeah. They're getting huge brownie points. At worst, this may be leading to something else. And when you look at it in terms of the deployment of indigenous, conserved, and protected areas, a whole linkage of these marine protection areas that are being proposed by First Nations communities up and down the coast. And then you add on top of that the buyback of commercial fishing licenses from commercial fishers to get them out of the industry, get them out of the sector. There's a lot of things that are stacking up against commercial and recreational fishers on the West Coast that are just driving them out of business. And if you're an outfitter, if you're a guide, if you're a lodge, if you're a person who owns a fishing boat, how long are you going to just hang on to that, asset where you can't make any money or have any pleasure? How long are you going to hang on to it? This has been going on since 2019, and it just keeps getting worse.
Well, just ask some of the lodges, unfortunately, that folded because of COVID. Like you can't, you just can't. It's not sustainable, especially if you are a new lodge or charter captain. Your bills are going to be piling up. You can't afford to not. No, absolutely not. The answer is no. Sally, it's an interesting question you ask. I will let Lawrence answer it. But I would say the answer to your question is, do fish have feelings, i.e. afraid, anxious, try and chase or grab a fish out of a live well? And yes, I would say they're very anxious, and yes, they get very afraid, not wanting to give them too much when it comes to pain receptors and other feelings. But Lawrence, I'll let you take it from there.
Well, I've done another podcast with Dr. Stephen Cook on exactly this question. He goes into intense detail about the research, the very little bit of research that has been released and spread over and over and over again over the internet, but never in any solid scientific journals, just the internet. Most of this is coming out from one man in Australia that fish feel pain. Now, it's just... Are they saying so? Dr. Stephen Cook says no. They feel things, but the way I explain it to children, and this just you look at a sunfish, at a bluegill, at a catfish, at a walleye, and then you look at who's eating those fish, right? And you look at what they have to deal with when you eat something like that. There's dozens and dozens of sharp, pointy things on their bodies that resemble hooks. They may be barbless, but they're still there. And yet it doesn't stop them from getting swallowed alive, right? And so if fish had a lot of pain receivers in their mouth, they would not eat those things, but they do eat those things. Bass eat sunfish, you know, pike eat walleye, muskie eat pike and walleye. You know, it doesn't matter how many pointy things they have on their fins, they get eaten. They get eaten. There's no doubt about it. They only stop getting eaten when they choke to death the thing that's trying to eat them because they're just too big. It has nothing to do with their pointy bits. So think of that. And from a pain perspective. Now, if you think about a sentient thing, a sentient animal feels joy, fear, sadness, anxiety, and has things it likes to do. You know, those are sentient things. Dogs are sentient. If you have a dog or a cat, you see them play, you see them afraid, things like that. Are fish sentient? I would say fish are pretty good at figuring things out. But do they have those feelings? They know when there's things they need to flee from because they've seen many of their counterparts get eaten when they hear a certain sound or when they see a certain prey. Like if you're pan fishing in the wintertime through the ice and you get your sounder on and you see all those little hooks down there, all those little marks, all the little panfish below the ice, and then you see a big hook coming, or before you even see that big hook, all of a sudden all those little hooks, all those little marks hit the bottom, just boom, straight down, boom. And then, 5 seconds later, a big mark moves through, a pike. They know that. They know what to avoid, and because they've experienced it their whole life, right? So they, all the panfish hit the bottom, lie down, and so not to get eaten. So they know what to do to survive. But is it pure fear or is it just training? Is it just training? I don't think fish are sentient. I don't think they have emotions. They're machines. They know what to do to survive. They know what to do to eat. They know what to do to spawn. They have things that they learn how to do and they figure things out, and a lot of them die on the way, and they see that because, they're hanging around with each other quite a bit.
I think some of their tactics that they use when they feel threatened, like for instance, sardines will school up in those big balls and they all seem to move in the same direction. That is something that, may be learned over time, but I'd like to think that's inherent in all sardines.
For sure, because the ones that didn't do it got eaten.
Exactly, right?
So the ones that were left are the ones that ball up.
That was where I was going with that, like the no-brainer, because the ones that don't go around in the ball, they're gone. They're in the stomach of the fish that are chasing them. But in terms of feelings, Sonia is convinced that pike bite her because they're angry.
No.
She will also mention that catfish growl at me, but they sound like burps too. So,
well, you know what? This is the big misnomer when people are bitten by pike and muskie. They think it's aggression and fighting back, but in reality, it's just protecting itself. It's what it is. It's just protecting itself, or it's curious. It's curious. Like, what is that? And they taste with their mouth, right? They feel with their mouth. They don't have hands. It's all done with their mouth. So most shark bites that happen inshore, where you look down, your legs got a big gash and you're bleeding. Those are fish just sampling. They're young sharks just learning. Is that good to eat? Is that something I want to eat? They're just sampling. They're just tasting and sampling with their mouths, like we sample with our hands. And so there's a lot of that goes on. But don't say a muskie jumps out of the net and bites you, because it gives them a sense that they're being ferocious, and they are aggressive killers, but they're not ferocious towards humans. They're just aggressive.
We're giving them way too much credit. As Jim would say, fish need safety, they need food and a place to spawn. Nothing more, nothing less.
Well put.
Yeah. Plus the Jaws theme song is playing in the background when they Please, on that note, continue with your snippets of information.
Okay, we got a few bits here.
Yeah.
So David Phillips, Queen's University researcher, did a 5-year study on bass, on fishing beds and what happens to fish. So he found a lake in Quebec where he was allowed to study fish for 5 years and in 2 different bodies of water. And what happens to the fish that were fished and released, caught and released on beds, and what happens to the ones that weren't? And the results are absolutely stunning. absolutely stunning. And because of this results, there's going to be some changes coming down in 2024 in I think zone 18 or zone 20, I maybe zone 18, where you're going to have some no fishing zones during the spawn and just after the spawn, to allow the males to take care of the young bass on the nest, for that 3 or 4 week period after the hatch occurs. And that's crucial time. And if you take the bass away, this is a big problem. And even if you're fishing for pike or walleye, because those seasons are open at that point, but you accidentally stumble into a bass nest with a spinner bait, oh, sorry, you put them back right away. That bit of interaction with those male fish guarding those fry can make a huge difference, absolute huge difference. So the study is conclusive, and I think it's up to all of us to start to understand this, that this is in all our best interests. It's in the best interest of the bass, and it's the best interest of maintaining a good population of big fish. Because what happens is, if you take the big ones off the nest, and then the little ones come in and do a spawn with little fish, and it's not nearly as successful, and you're having small fish produce small fish, because you've taken the big ones away from the nest early. So this is a big problem, and he's proven it. And apparently the FM zone 18, I believe, is adopting this measure. So it'll be an interesting bit of research. This flies in the face of much else that's going on in the United States, where bed fishing is condoned and they fish year round. But like I said, look what happened this spring when the Bassmaster Elite came through and had their tournament on out of Waddington there on the St. Lawrence River, and they were fishing for fish on beds. Absolutely. And these fish are moved, right? They're brought in and weighed. So all of those nests were write-offs, absolute total write-offs. Whatever was in those nests is no longer there. The fish are moved off. By the time they get back, it's over. So
I myself, and you know what, Laura, sort of jump in, but
yeah, no, go for it.
I'm never one to like fishing opportunities taken away from us recreational anglers, or any for that matter, but mostly for our recreational purposes. But I have to say, I do find it a little odd that we are able to target fish during spawning times. I think one of the most refreshing things that I heard, as much of a pain in the arse as it was for our Manitoba CFNers, was they shut down the reaches of the Red River because the fish and water temperature and walleye hadn't spawned yet. They had catastrophic floods. Water temperatures were very, very low, delaying fish entering and hovering over top of the spawning beds. In fact, they were probably not even sure where the spawning beds were because everything was covered in mud and silt. Regardless of that, their M&R, if you will, DNR, basically reached out to recreational anglers and made a statement that they would prefer that folks not target walleye in the Red River during the time that it would typically be open to allow them to spawn. I think that was a great reaction to what was happening, and the fact that the anglers bought into it would suggest to me that I'm not the only one that feels that way, that there are others out there that feel as strongly that if they're spawning, leave them alone.
Yeah. And what he determined is that if you secure these spawning areas on a lake during this post spawn, where the males are there guarding the fry, for about 10% of the lake, 10% of the shoreline, that were these key areas, the quality of fishing in the lake goes up so dramatically, like exponentially improves. Exponentially. It's absolutely astonishing, his research. It's just night and day quality of fishing, just by taking that 10% and say, look, for the next 4 weeks, there's no fishing in these 10% of the areas clearly marked on this lake, and then it starts on July 1st or July 6th again. And then you can fish there for anything you want. But in the meantime, you can't fish there for anything on those certain areas, because, how many people go fishing for pike with a white spinnerbait in the spring? Everybody.
Yep.
Everybody. So, yeah.
George Morgan, thanks so much. You really stepped in. Unfortunately, Jay Barnucz is not going to be with us tonight, but George has stepped in a huge way and reminds us that the fisheries management zone plans for Zone 10 and Zone 15 are up for public comment. So make sure you have your say. Make sure you go to the links, Google it. Everybody's great at Googling. If you don't see the link up here in the comments, please make sure you go and Google this, because as I said, if you fish these zones, you have the ability to have a say. You are a stakeholder, because if you do enjoy that body of water, you are a stakeholder like everybody else. So yeah,
Nice.
Thanks, George, for that.
Man, George is on top of things, man. George.
100%. We got to get him on here one of these days. I've said that to Jay. So
right,
Jeremy's saying, what if we were to say run a bass tournament? And I would have to admit that in the States, this is done on a regular basis, especially with MLF. But would an MLF style tournament alter the effects of spawning bass and them getting back to their nests and doing?
So they said the research shows that if it's reduced to less than, like if it's reduced down to 60% or less, the male fish will abandon the nest. So a loss of 40% of the fry or the eggs will cause the male fish to abandon the nest.
Gotcha.
And this can happen in seconds. Like if you have gobies or panfish, where you have maybe a dozen panfish just hovering around the nest, right? And that's what they do. So, and where do you not find panfish in Canada? Where you have bass, you have panfish. That's pretty much guaranteed. So if you have these panfish hovering, and then you take the fish and you bring it in, you weigh it, and then you release it, and it swims back, within 15 seconds, you can have that kind of loss at the nest, and the male will go back, assess the situation, go, no, it's not worth my time anymore. They swim off. And then that nest site will be taken over by a female and a young male, because the big ones got first crack at it, right? The best sites, and they do the first crack at it. But now you got this small fish, and are they small because they're young, or are they small because they're genetically small fish?
Yeah.
And this is the question. And Dr. Cook says, big fish make big fish, small fish make small fish.
Best advice, and it comes right from a doc, so there is no debating the issue. I have always been a firm believer in that, and it's nice to have a doctor substantiate what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Please, Lawrence, continue on with your snippets.
Okay. Yeah. So creel optimization. I look, there's a link there to a recording of a very clever ministry official who is speaking to other researchers who do count fish. And he said, look, how do you make the best out of a creel survey? And I always thought creel surveys, they're very limited. They're very costly. To do a creel survey of a lake, it could cost $25,000. It lasts maybe 2 weeks. And what time of the year it is, who are you fishing, what's the weather like, there's so many variables on whether you're going to get a good survey. Is it a cold front that just went through for the last 2 weeks? No one's catching anything, or is it the best fishing ever, right? So creel surveys have a lot of weaknesses, and they're expensive, and there's no way we can ever use creel surveys to assess and manage all our lakes in Canada. It's just never going to happen. The cost is just overwhelming. But there are ways of doing creel surveys better. And this guy has figured it out, and he's worth it. And I don't want to get the details wrong. So I check out the Bluefish Canada News. There's a link there. As well, the video of Dr. Phillips explaining the bass nest, it's there. The Bluefish Radio interview with Dr. Cook's there. All this bass stuff, it's all there. And fish counting, measuring things, it's there. So check that stuff out. It's very cool. Let's see what else.
Interesting. Well, in regards to creel samples, if anybody's ever helped out, they're physically demanding. They're usually done at the worst times here when it comes to weather. But to basically give an example of a creel sample that must have happened, and the results drastically altered, I should say. We shared this last week with the crab fishery out in the Bering Sea. They closed it. Like,
Yeah, the
what?
snow crab.
What?
Oh no! You're talking. Yeah, no, I'm talking snow crab. That's on my list.
What? Well, as I said, that's there's a few others that they go after the. I can't think of it. It starts with an O, but
Yeah.
Opelia. I think it's the Opelia. Anyway, they have shut down that crab fishery. This is a huge money maker, a huge industry. And I sure hope those folks didn't get that grill sample wrong, because a lot of people are going to lose their shirt.
So if you're talking about the snow crab in Alaska, deadliest catch, right?
Yeah.
So they all of a sudden they said this season, like 4 years ago, they noticed the samples they took. They had tons of juvenile snow crab. They weren't big enough to be caught. They were recently, young crab. But they figured if the 2022, this year, would be the big year. This would be the year that all these crab would reach catchable size, right? This was going to be a big year. And then what happened? Last year, in the last 12 months or so, all these snow crab, all decided to eat each other. 8 billion snow crab disappeared. They ate each other. Wow. There was nothing else to eat. And why? Why the hell did this happen? The only thing they can figure out is that there was a small rise in ocean temperature in Alaska, and that triggers these crabs to be born sooner and more often. And it triggered this giant birth increase of snow crab 4 years ago. And now you had way too many crabs chasing way too little food in the biome, in their ecosystem, so they just turned on each other and ate each other, and now there's none. And the 8 billion snow crab disappeared. The fishing's closed.
Hard to believe, but
Well,
and I don't know. I'm thinking positively. I'm hoping that because of those change in currents and the increase in water temperature, they just moved somewhere else.
could be.
I mean, I'm trying to be positive, because I was stunned when I read that.
Yeah,
they closed it down. Like, never mind the deadliest catch, but there's a lot of boats out there that aren't even on the show that depend on that fishery. And I just hope somebody didn't get it wrong, because that's huge.
That's huge. And they say the loss, like, we're not talking a 50%, loss of crab. The loss is so significant, it's going to take years and years to rebuild.
I don't even know how you start.
Yeah, you just no fishing. They go after other crabs, but those other crabs, they have to go way out to Siberia, way over to Russia to catch those ones, right on the American-U.S. border, or right up to the Russian border, I guess, as close as they can get. Because it's their side of the ocean.
Can you imagine what a crab hatchery looks like?
Kind of get the.
Yeah, me either.
Oh my God! Oh no! This is these little things, right? We think of temperature changes. Oh well, it goes up and down a few degrees. No big deal, It's a little less ice, a little more fishing. It's all good, right? Little things like this that tip the balance in an ecosystem that's already, that's set up a certain way. And everything goes a little skew. It's like the tilt on a pinball machine. Boot, boot, boot. Right.
No kidding.
Game's over.
Yeah. Tilt.
Yeah. Tilt. Yeah.
By all means, let's carry on.
Okay. So a couple things coming up. Rebuilding Abundance Symposium. Oceania Canada is going to have their one-day big workshop this Wednesday here in Ottawa at the Westin Hotel. And they're asking people who want to know about our oceans and what's Canada doing about our fisheries, because apparently we're not doing such a great job. And they want to get everyone together and have a good chinwag about that. Right. We're in the home of the government of Canada. So this is Oceania Canada taking some big steps forward and being activists. Yay, Oceania Canada. I'm going to try to get there for a bit of that. I know the director and the head researcher. I've had the head researcher on Bluefish Radio 3 times. They're great people doing great work. So hats off to those guys.
I'd be interested to hear some of the things that they think we're doing wrong, or things that we need to improve on. Obviously, water quality is a big thing. That's huge.
I'll find out.
But it'd be interesting to find out what it is that they have cited as us doing wrong.
Their big thing, from what I know, is that say we've got, just say a number, pick a number. There's 10, say, big important fish species, that 10 in our oceans that are at risk, that we really count on, but they're not doing well at all. They're endangered or at risk. We've only got, when that's identified, we're supposed to put in place a rebuilding plan. And so to rebuild those stocks as fast as possible and do whatever it takes. We've done about 3 out of the 10.
Wow.
That's the first big problem. And then the other 7, fishing continues.
Yeah.
Right.
As I said, we are on that brink, just because we have, I think about it all. Am I the only one? I'm going to reach out to our community that's watching. Am I the only one that thinks about this way? When you go into a store and you see all the fillets, all the shrimp, all the crab meat, everything in the freezer, and a lot of the stuff that is in the fish market that's fresh, that's, in the display cases, you times that by the number of stores, by the number of cities, by the number of provinces, the number of states where all of this fish is sold and presented in this way. Have we got enough? And how much of that goes to waste?
50%. We know that 50% of the seafood caught in the United States. I don't have Canadian numbers, but I this came out in the news, October 10th news. 50% of the seafood caught in the United States is wasted. And that's not the bycatch. That's not like we're out there netting, a certain species, and somehow we got this other species in the net, and we're not allowed to bring it home because we don't have a license for that, so we have to throw it back. Even if it's all dead, we throw it back. And that can be 15 to 18% of a catch, can be bycatch. And that's just dead fish thrown overboard because you're not licensed to catch it for whatever reason. It's endangered. It's not in season, whatever, so that's not, but 50% of seafood is wasted.
Yes. And as Erica says, wish we were allowed to give the food away to people who need it. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more difficult here in Canada. I will say it's a lot easier down the States to do that. When it comes to sharing to the community or giving back to, food banks and what have you. I know we're making strides up here in Canada. Yeah. We got to do a better job with this because
we do. We need better transportation. You think about all the different processes. The fish is brought here, it's processed, it's moved there, it's trucked here, it's sitting there on a shelf, it's in the grocery store. There's it's just tons and tons where it's just this and that is thrown out. It's just, okay, beyond, it's not fresh. We don't want that. That's not interesting. No one wants to eat that thing. Boom, garbage. And this is the problem, right? We want a perfect fillet. It has to be a certain size. Fish stick has to be a certain size, and if it's not, no one's going to buy it. So it gets thrown out.
I'm going to ask you this question, and I think I may know the answer, but I'll let you answer because you are far more well-versed in this than I. Lawrence, who is the largest consumer of seafood? What country?
I don't know, but I do know that I think 1.5 billion to 2 billion people on the earth depend on seafood as their primary source of protein. So it's a quarter of the world's population still depends on seafood as their primary source of protein. That's huge. And the funny thing is, we can do this. We can do it even better. Like if you think about, if we managed it better, if it was sustainable, if we didn't waste it, if we didn't spoil it, we could do better. We could feed the whole planet easily if we did it right.
Interesting. Well, you know what? I'd like to dive more into that topic because it is a concern of mine. And again, I hate to be that sensationalist person because I'm not. But when you see the piles of shark that, they've got at a fish market that have no fins and the quantity of shark that are taken each day, for the sake of, I'm glad we're making strides on eliminating that. But then again, I got a buddy, Dave Helmer, who reached out to me, who's down in our southern waters enjoying some incredible fishing, and every fish that comes to the surface is eaten by a shark. So it's, I hate to be that person that says, I know they're endangered and we have to protect them because we do, all fish. But there is good numbers of sharks still around. Just we got to be conscious of the fact of how much it is that we're consuming,
Yeah.
and consuming badly, because a lot of that fish, as you know, just gets thrown over the side and rots, drowns.
Yeah.
It's-
And shark populations are increasing in certain areas, and definitely not many other areas. That's for sure. We got lots of room for growth. The United States is way out in front of the rest of the world, way out in front. We're catching up, but we got a long ways to go. But there's a lot worse things going on. Like, when you have 80% of the fleet of China around the Galapagos Islands, just pecking off the middle of the South Pacific, middle of nowhere, and they're just circling like vultures 24/7. They just pound, move on, pound, find another source of food, of seafood protein, figure out how to catch it, harvest it till it's gone, till it's no longer cost effective to harvest it because there's just not enough coming up back in the nets, and then they move on to the next one. And that's how they do it, right?
Jeremy, this is actually a really interesting question. Our point that he brings up: would making seasonal selling be a realistic idea for groceries or grocers? I know I can get walleye year round, even during close seasons. Great point, and I will bring up one of those awkward moments that I had back when I was young and full of piss and vinegar. I walked in, and I shouldn't say the name. I'd rather not say the name, but I walked into a more popular seafood style massive store. It starts with an O. That's all I'm going to tell you. I'm sure you can take it from there. And this was back in the heyday when I was raising walleye, and it was, I want to say, late March. And at the back in the fish area, there was this massive walleye. I mean, it was a hen. If it was 12 pounds, if it was a pound, it was 12 pounds. This thing was huge and just full of eggs. And I asked the manager. I ended up getting thrown out. I asked the manager. I said, "Where'd you get that fish?" Because I said it's closed everywhere. Like there's no way you got this. And he said, "Oh, I think it came from Lake Erie." I said, "No, there's no way that came from Lake Erie. Where did it come from?" And I think one of the helpers said it came from Manitoba. And I'm like, oh. So Jeremy, I'm with you there. I think we should do a better job of policing that in our grocers, and at least maybe model what's going on, outside the store doors. And I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. Is maybe we should mirror what's going on around us in our zones.
I love that, fruit, vegetables, and seasonal. I mean, my wife brings home watermelon in January, and I go, where the hell is that coming from?
Yeah.
Not a greenhouse, that's for damn sure.
Yeah.
It's coming from the other side of the world. Someone's flying watermelons around in planes.
Yeah, absolutely. Please continue. Do you have any more?
Just one little notice, and then a call to action, you guys.
Fantastic.
Northern Ontario Tourism is going to have their big. They're back. They're going to be meeting with all the guy outfitters and lodges in Thunder Bay later in November. If you're interested in going, sign up. There's some great deals. They even have a bus that's going to take people from North Bay all across Ontario to Thunder Bay. You can get on that bus and get back at a really good price. They got some good prices at hotels. So if you want to job in this industry, you want to guide, you want to cook, you want to be part of it, you are part of it, this is the place you want to be. End of November, NOTO, N-O-T-O, Northern Ontario Tourism Organization. Check it out. If you want more news, the links and everything, it's in the news, Bluefish News. So these are great people. These guys have gone through hell with COVID, and the border closure. And this last summer didn't help either with the CAN Pass thing there, that app that you're supposed to download. Man, Scotty, I'll tell you the story. I was crossing the border twice in 2 days with my family in the truck because we were chasing down podcasts, right? So into the States, back out of the States, into the States again, back out of the States. So we did the CAN Pass app the first day. We showed up, didn't even ask for it. So then we come, and you have to do it when you're coming back into Canada. So then we're coming back into Canada the second day, and the guy says, CAN Pass app? Yeah, we show it. He goes, oh, no, this is from yesterday. He goes, yeah? Well, no, you have to do it every time. This is no good.
Yeah.
And then he starts, he had us there for 10, 15 minutes, scaring the crap out of us. You know, he said, I've given out tickets to families of four like yours that are $26,000. It's $6,500 a person. No wonder people aren't coming to Canada, you know, when you have crap like that going down and random testing and, you know, all these big scary things to keep Americans out of Canada. So our fishing lodges and resorts have really taken a beating over 3 seasons now. 3 seasons. We need to help them get back.
I agree. And, you know, I mean, there's great organizations out there like Destination Northern Ontario, NOTO. There's so many groups that do some fantastic promotion of our North. And I'm hoping our governments are setting money aside for that. A lot of folks may not see the importance of it unless you own a lodge or you visit a lodge. You know, I'll say Camp McIntosh and Horwood, which are two of our fondest places to go to with our retreats. Those two did it right, you know, and Horwood traditionally has always had a heavy based American content up there. So for them to survive like they did, it hasn't been easy.
No.
But then you've got Tracy at Camp McIntosh who did it. She did it bang on. Her and Andre reached out to a lot of interesting groups. They diversified, as they would say, not necessarily targeting anglers, but even just, you know, overnight big cabin cruisers that want to park somewhere because the wind's kicked up in Georgian Bay. Maybe they want to have a hot meal and a shower. So Tracy had the wherewithal to reach out to groups like that, and you know, suddenly all of a sudden these massive cruisers were showing up at the just off the dock. So stuff like that, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, but that's easy for us to say.
It's so important to the economy. Like my friend, he runs Discover Northern Ontario. He says tourism, fishing tourism, generates more wealth than forestry and mining combined in this area in northwestern Ontario. Wow. It's a bigger contributor to the economy up there than forestry and mining combined.
Wow, that's huge. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second. If anybody's ever driven through Hearst and seen the big pile of wood, you know, right beside the highway, and it is a mass. It's like 2 football fields full of lumber, and it's in some cases 100 feet high. To think the amount of wood that's there still doesn't come anywhere close to what is spent on fishing and tourism. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's so vital. It's so vital. You lose out all these little communities, all these people that live up there year round and depend on these jobs. It's dead, right? It's so important.
Call to action.
I got a call to action. All right. Oh no, not that one. Yeah. So the International Joint Commission, this is the body, the Canada-U.S. body that takes care of Great Lakes and all shared water resources across our shared border with the United States and Canada. So they're doing a survey. You can do a survey. You can listen to the webinars and participate in the webinars. You can send your comments in by writing through an email, or there's a bunch of ways. And I have all the links there in the news, in the feature at the end of the Bluefish News. There's a bunch of links and dates for the webinars. So each lake, Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence, there's 6 webinars for each of Great Lake and the St. Lawrence. If you want to drill down to that level of detail and participate at that level, please do. But look, these guys have been talking about water quality forever. And they're really, we've been shaking their cage, I'm the chair of the Great Lakes Fish Health Network, and we've been shaking their cage for a while now, since 2018, saying, fish, what about the fish? Yeah, there's stuff in the water, but what about the fish? And here's your opportunity to have a say on this, you guys. Like, go in there and make some comments and talk about fish. Like, what's going on with the fish? Mm-hmm. Are they safe to eat? Are the fish struggling because of what is in the water? Are they suffering? We know fish are suffering in many ways. We know small minnows are developing, male minnows are developing ovaries in the St. Lawrence River and the Ottawa River because of the estrogen being released through the pill by women who take the pill and it pee out this estrogen hormone, and it goes into the fish, and they're now developing ovaries. And we know there's things like this happening. We know PFAS is in the fish. We know plastic is in the fish. But yeah, not just about is it safe for us to eat, and that's super important, but what about the fish themselves? Is this affecting their ability to live their lives without pain, right? Without discomfort, without, infection and disease and so forth? So ask these questions. Here's your opportunity to help me get fish on the map. Because I'll tell you, when I started this in 2017, fish were not on the map with any environmental group, any conservation group, the IJC included, and many other groups. It was all water quality. Can I drink this water? Yes, no, why not? Fix it. It's very, very just looking at our own needs, because 40 million people drink the water out of the Great Lakes. So it's also fish. So there you go. Get on that, you guys, please.
Something was said to me a while back, and I totally discarded it. But as I said, I might as well just throw it in here for the sake of conversation. Somebody was saying that Lake Erie, it is probably one of the cleaner Great Lakes, and we're under the impression because of zebra mussels and the fact that Lake Erie is so shallow in comparison to other Great Lakes that it's able to filter a lot of its water, through and get rid of a lot of the pollutants and send it down into Lake Ontario, St. Lawrence, and then eventually into the Atlantic Ocean. Somebody said something that was really interesting, that a lot of our pollution is taken care of by the fish, not just the biomass of zebra mussels that are filtering the water, but the fact that, and if Jason was here, he would be able to share.
So dioxin is one. Remember, dioxin was a big issue, and so the alewife ate it, and the more alewife was there, the dioxin levels in Lake Ontario dropped with the alewife. So that's great. So yeah, there's less dioxin in the water because it's in the alewife. But who's eating the alewife? The Pacific and salmon and so on. So it's interesting. Did the salmon get more dioxin in? But you're right. They do. There is capturing all the time, and even with weeds and wetlands for sure. And it can break some of the stuff down if it can be done. Roots can break stuff down, right? And turn it into stuff they need, and stuff they don't need, they just leave in the ground. They leave in the mud. So for sure that can happen. Absolutely. Absolutely. But as far as Lake Erie goes, and I don't remember where I read this, Scotty, but I'm sorry, Lake Erie is not doing that great.
Yes, and I think for no other reason than the amount of raw sewage that is dumped into that lake on a regular basis. And I'm sure there's other reasons too.
Yeah, there's lots, and it's not doing that great. Like in terms of cleanliness, I think it's the dirtiest lake.
I don't know. I hate to speak out of turn, but I just thought that was an interesting concept that somebody and as I said, it was worth listening to. Like I respected the individual based on their knowledge, and they brought that up, and I want to say I discounted it and tossed it aside. Well, I don't know. Maybe there is some
mercury levels definitely stabilize. Dioxin has been stabilized. It's plateaued now because the alewife population in Lake Ontario is sort of plateaued. It's not growing, it's not shrinking, but it's not as big as it used to be. And there's still giant bait balls of alewife out there in the Great Lakes, but not like it used to be, where and the salmon fishing, is according, right? They can only put so many salmon in that this ecosystem can support. When the alewife numbers go down, they put less salmon in. So yeah, instead of catching 20 salmon when you go out for a day, you might get 15 now. No, whoa, it's not so bad. It's not bad, but these fisheries are amazing. And I don't want to pass, the idea that everything's going to hell in a handbasket like it was in 1970 and 1980, where Lake Erie was considered a dead lake, technically declared a dead lake. It's not there. And Lake Ontario is getting better and better as a fishery. It is. There's proof. Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, they had that big drop in nutrients, and their salmon populations fell because these are hungry hippos that need a lot of food fast snacks because they grow so fast so quickly. But look at the lake trout and the whitefish that came in behind, and the walleye. that don't grow so fast, that are used to sort of more nutrient poor lakes, which is most of our Canadian lakes are nutrient poor, clear, lakes with, it's just what it is. And these fish can live in there for 100 years, 50 years, and they can make out.
Yeah.
So we still have amazing fishing and Great Lakes, but we just gotta, what it's worth, $8.5 billion to the economy of Canada and the United States, the fishing in the Great Lakes, $8.5 billion annually. And that's by far like 90% of that is recreational fishing. We should be paying attention to this.
100%. And on that note, Erica, this is a great question. How can we help? How as anglers, how as CFNers, how as stakeholders can we help? Is it one person at a time? Yes.
Surveys. Get on the surveys. People count the surveys. It's so important. People love surveys. These organizations live on surveys. They surveyed the last time they did the Great Lakes Public Satisfaction Survey of the Great Lakes, the IJC, 2 years ago. They said, let's get 500 Indigenous people to take it. So they went around and they found 500 Indigenous people taking it. You know what number one concern for them was? Fish.
Okay.
People freaked out. It helped put fish on the agenda, and in ways that they've never been before.
Well,
so if we can do it, we should do it. We need to do it.
Absolutely. And what we will do going forward is we will make sure that we share some of these links to these surveys, to these sites for us to go to. One question too, Mark. Yes, thanks, Terry, for reminding me of this. Mark asked about the American eel at the Cornwall Dam. Not exactly sure what the details of that question entail, but do you have anything on the American eel at the Cornwall Dam?
Well, it's not what it used to be in terms of eel. And when these giant eels swim down, I think Jason talked about this last week, when they swim down to the Atlantic Ocean, go into that giant center of the Atlantic Ocean there to spawn, they take the path of least resistance. So you got an eel that's maybe a meter and a third long, trying to use the current as much as possible to conserve energy, and it's following the current of the fastest current. That's the water that's getting sucked into the turbine, right? That's the current. It's like a giant vacuum cleaner, because when it gets shot out of the turbine, it's coming out at 100 kilometers an hour. That's how fast that water comes out of a turbine at that dam, or most dams.
Oh, here we go. So Mark just chimed in. He said there was a big fish kill, found hundreds of them. I didn't hear about that. Lawrence, did you hear about that?
Saunders Dam? No, that was smallmouth bass on the shore near the docks. And they said it could have been the dams, it could have been water temperature, or it could have been fishing tournaments. It was definitely around a boat launch. And then they found a bunch of large smallmouth bass that were dead. And the first people pointed out was some local tournaments that happened recently, and they said they didn't release the fish, they weren't fizzed properly. Maybe people were speculating. Scientists say, well, some other people said, oh, it's the dams, and then other people said, well, it's water temperature, and that happens. So yeah, that happened about a month ago, I think 4 to 6 weeks ago, but there was no conclusive evidence. This bothers me, Scotty. We had a big fish kill, 2 big fish kills on the Ottawa River 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. No one took samples. No one took water samples. No one took tissue samples. A few government officials got their hands on some of these dead fish, and then they didn't talk to anybody about it. And the results was just, what they said in the end, the cause, they died of excessive oxygen.
Excessive oxygen?
Excessive oxygen. Yeah. And I talked to Dr. Cook about that, and he just shook his head. And he said, come on.
Okay.
That's not a fact. So they are officials, they do not take fish health seriously.
Yeah. And so Mark's got some skin in the game. He was the one that found it, unfortunately. So he was,
wow.
He's wanting to know, obviously. And Mark, I'm hoping that we'll be able to have an answer for you, or Lawrence will be able to come up with it.
Mark, reach out to me send me an email at director@bluefishcanada.ca. director@bluefishcanada.ca. Send me an email with your contact information. Let me know what you know, and let's poke around on this, buddy. Let's check it in. I'll find someone to talk to, someone who has some knowledge on this, and we'll see if we can get some answers.
That's awesome. Lawrence, as always, thanks so much for joining us and spending the time and filling the gap. Because as I said, our brother Jason couldn't make it. He's busy doing research, taking advantage of the wonderful weather out this way. And hopefully all of you folks are doing the same. But in the meantime, Lawrence, you have yourself a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, dude. All right. On that note, thanks for everyone who stuck around. Big shout out to Jim and Lawrence who got us through this. Jay, hope everything went well. I hope you arrived back in your hotel safe and sound. We'll be looking forward to seeing you next Monday. In the meantime, get out and enjoy this weather if you have great weather. If you don't, thanks for sending it our way. We really appreciate it. But have yourself a great week. Thanks to all of those who send in fish pics. I can't say it enough what great work our team does behind the scenes. This is our Monster Monday, and there was some incredible fish shared. Corey, beautiful, beautiful sturgeon. This is our buddy Jody. That is a massive walleye, very healthy walleye. This is a very decent pike. Whitney, beautiful stuff. Absolutely gorgeous edit. Walt, I love this edit. And then, of course, we shared this one as well. This is an interesting fish. Just look at the girth. This is what I would call a Scotty-sized fish. The stomach is bigger than the body. What a wonderful, wonderful fish it is. You can see the city of Buffalo's in the background. Hans the Carver was generous enough to share this with us and wanted it to be featured. So we're very, very thankful of that. But if you have a fish pic or a fish video and you'd like to share it, please send it to the Canadian Fishing Network Facebook page. Go to the inbox or click message, and you can do it right away. And as I said, what it does is it allows us the ease of doing an edit without having to ask, who it is, where it is, who do you want to be tagged in it? Are there any companies that you want the logo put in the pic? But there's a whole bunch of things that you can help with our edits and our edit team. So whatever little help you can provide, we'll end up just making the edit that much better. But pretty cool fish that Hans and his angler, I think it was Dan King. I want to say Dan King. Give proper props to the angler who caught that. But yeah, what a fish. Anyway, that's it, folks. I want to thank you so much for joining us, sticking with us, and continuing to support this incredible community that has nothing but more things and great things to do and achieve. In the meantime, I think it's up to Dave to take us out. Do your best, Dave. All the best. Love you all. Take care. Peace.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end.